All right, we have some breaking news right now on the coaching search for the Carolina Panthers.
Dave Canales to be the next head coach. Canales has been very high on David Tepper's list, especially with what he did as a first-year coordinator down in Tampa Bay.
Canales joined USC in 2009 with Pete Carroll. Then he left and went to Seattle. Dan Morgan was in Seattle. Canales was in Seattle. They kind of cut their teeth together, know each other very well.
There's a lot to like here for the Carolina Panthers, especially the work that Canales has done with quarterbacks.
He did it with Geno Smith last year in Seattle. He's doing it now with Baker, and that has to do with the play calling. It is under center, play action, shot plays down the field, and it is proven that is working for them.
What is the process that you see when you look at a quarterback you're going to be working with and you go about making sure you put them in a position to succeed?
We become the version of our offense that puts them in the most comfortable and confident place where they can play fast and decisive. And I think that's the beauty of our system, is that we have enough confidence, over the years to kind of evolve into who our people are.
This is a guy they believe has a hugely bright future. The Carolina Panthers identify their new head coach.
What's going on, Panther Nation? It's your man CDougie and Uncle Quan back in the cut, man. We have been hanging low. Really been looking forward to this news finally being here. We are a couple of days behind, but we're definitely going to break it down to you guys, man. Hopefully everybody's having a good Friday, getting ready for the weekend. Definitely going to have some good games for the AFC and NFC championship game. But now we finally got our coach. We got our GM, man. Seeing that clip that the Panthers brought out before we jump into the content, definitely got the juices flowing. Two quarterbacks that were basically written off, Geno Smith and Baker Mayfield, underneath Dave Canales, have definitely had a resurgence in their career, man. But before we get into content, I'm going to hand it out to my guy, Uncle Quan. Tell the people what's up, Uncle Quan.
What's up, everybody? What be going on, man? It's your boy Q, a.k.a. Uncle Quan. Doug, as always, I appreciate you for bringing me on, man. I'm excited to get into this. We got our guys of the future. We got our head coach. We got our GM. The first time in the David Tepper era where we hired a new GM and a head coach at the same time. So this is a completely different era that we're about to go through in Carolina, man. And hopefully it's for the best. Obviously, Panthers fans, we have been in the dark for so long. Now, since 2017, we haven't been to the playoffs. So hopefully moving forward into the future, this is the right choice, but it's going to take time, man. But we're going to get into it. As always, hit that like button, man. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed to What's Up, Doug, already. Let's go ahead and get into it, man.
Yes, sir, man. Like Quan said, for the first time underneath David Tepper, we finally have a new GM and we have another head coach. But now you have a new dynamic duo in the Carolinas. Mm-hmm. When this Dan Morgan news came out, it was kind of made me feel a little fuzzy, like, you could have hired Dan Morgan right after you fired Scott Fitterer. But we're not going to go into Sportsology, the firm he used, but outside of the firm, I think we did get it right with Dan Morgan. If you see before Luke Kuechly, before the Thomas Davises, before the John Beesons, Dan Morgan was that standard for the linebacker room in the Carolinas. Yes, he was coached by the great Sam Mills. Yes, he was on that first Super Bowl team with Musa Muhammad, with Steve Smith, with Julius Peppers, with some of the greats, Jake Delhomme. So he knows what that keep pounding mantra means and what it means to the Carolinas. I think Dan Morgan has a lot of respect around the league, and I think he is well respected. If you look at his track record, regardless of the decisions outside of Scott Fitterer, Dan Morgan is respected. He was director of personnel when he was at Seattle. If you look at the players they were able to scout and bring into Seattle over his time being there, he has a great track record. Then he followed Carolina North, the Buffalo Bills, underneath Brandon Beane, to be the assistant GM, to actually learn from him before he became the assistant GM back where he belonged in the Carolinas. I think the hire is great, but I think he does not have time to miss on decision making.
Oh, yeah.
Starting with hiring a coach in Dave Canales, which we would get into next. With free agency starting up, then you have these scouting, different scouting games and different pro days. everything that Dan Morgan has to do, he has to hit it out the park. I understand a lot of people don't think we have the assets or the money to do so, but I think Dan Morgan is going to definitely surprise a lot of people. Again, one blueprint that Quan and I both say, you don't rush this process. Look at what the Detroit Lions are doing. They are in the NFC Championship game because they did it right. We will talk about the puzzle pieces with the three-headed monster with David Tepper, Dave Canales, and Dan Morgan, but you have to be patient, and I think we got it right. But I think there is some type of scrutiny and optimism with our fan base. But I'm looking forward to Dan Morgan leading this charge of being the GM. But Quan, what you think, man?
Right now where I stand personally, I'm just on a let's see. I'm on a let's see basis right now. But like you said, man, Dan Morgan is well respected around the league. He has a decent track record. He has some experience with bringing in personnel. I mean, like you said, he was player personnel over there with Seattle, and he was the assistant GM here in Charlotte. So he has a little bit of experience. However, I'm gonna play devil's advocate for a little bit, man. Obviously, he's been Scott Fitterer's right hand man, and obviously, if you're a Panthers fan, you've seen all the bad decisions that Scott Fitterer has made. So, how much of that was Dan Morgan really a part of? How much of the decisions did he really have as far as having to say so? How much was that on Dan Morgan, and how much was that on Scott Fitterer? So now that he has the full seat as a GM, I'm interested to see how we move forward. I'm interested to see him make the correct decisions. Like you said, we don't really have time to really backtrack. We got to get this thing right. We really got to hit it in the ballpark, but it's going to take time. I'm not expecting him to just come out the gate and just, hit every free agent, hit every draftee, man. So we're going to see. We're going to see how this go, but I do think Dan Morgan is well respected around the league. Obviously, he's one of my favorite players as a Carolina Panther. Before Luke Kuechly came, he was literally my favorite linebacker of all time with the Carolina Panthers. So I definitely love Dan Morgan as a player. But as a GM, this is the first time we're seeing it. So let's see what he got. Let's see what he got up his sleeve.
I agree with that because, again, if you're a Carolina Panther, Dan Morgan was a headhunter. And if people know football, you know what I mean by that headhunter. Like, he would come down and knock you off the block. But I will give one more comparison outside of Dan Morgan. Just look at John Lynch. John Lynch was a color TV analyst before he was the GM for the 49ers, but Sportsology, regardless of how we feel about it, we did use a firm supposedly. I think a lot of people are looking at an outside hire, but if you look at all the decisions that we have to make, why not pick somebody inside? I think that is Dan Morgan's only downfall, that he was with this mess in Carolina. He was in that front office, but with Brian Burns have to be in re-sign possibly, or using that as a trade asset, that is a question in hand. J.C. Horn's fifth-year option. Dante Jackson being in the last year of his contract. Are you going to re-sign him, or what are you going to do with him? Jeremy Chin being a free agent now. If Evero does come back, are we going to bring him, move him, etc.? Offensive line depth. It's a lot of questions that I think Dan Morgan already had a heads up or an advantage when it came to this GM search. So he knows what needs to be filled on this team. Now it's a matter of, can you actually prove it and say, this is my plan outside of Scott Fitterer? I said this or that person. Show us. We don't want to hear from the third hand anymore. Show us. I know Quan said you don't have to hit on every draft pick. I need you to hit on every draft pick. I'm tired of just getting a first-round pick right and not getting gems in the later rounds. A lot of people don't understand. Most of your championship rosters, Super Bowl rosters, are built from round 3 and after. The third round and after is where most of your rosters are built through champions. Yes, you do have your first-round picks, but it doesn't just take one player. It takes 11 on both sides of the ball. So I'm definitely expecting this offseason to definitely be intriguing again. But my optimism right now is at a 3 before we get into Dave Canales. Where would you have your number on a scale of 1 to 10, Quan, right now?
As far as what, Dan Morgan?
Yes, right now when we talk about Dan Morgan, once you heard the news on a scale of 1 to 10, what was your number at?
If I'm being honest, my initial reaction was more so like a 4. It kind of goes back to, okay, this guy was already in house, so why not clean house and just start from scratch? But after doing, a little bit more research and looking more into it, I'm feeling a little bit better. I'm gonna bump it up to about a 6.5, somewhere around that ballpark. Again, this is really just like a prove it to me. Let's see what you got. Let's see what kind of pull you really have. Let's see how much respect you have around the league. What kind of free agents can you bring here? Given that this is a dumpster fire situation, some people in free agent, not even some people, the people in free agent, they want to win a championship. So they're trying to go to a championship team. I mean, how can you convince somebody to come here to Carolina where we've had issues, with our offense and identity for the past couple of years, where we have an owner who's literally embarrassing us, week in and week out with the decisions that he's made and just the dumb shit that he's done before. So I'm right now, I'm at like a 6.5 with it because I just don't know. I just don't know yet, but I feel a little bit good about it. So we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see, man. Like I said, it's a wait. Excuse me, it's a wait and take advantage of the opportunity for the Carolina Panthers. So let's go ahead and go into Dave Canales because it's a lot that we can really go into a deeper dive. When the Mike Vrabel news broke, I think everybody thought Mike Vrabel was going to be the head coach. I hit Quan up. We were like, hey, did you see the news? Yeah. But I think initially I was like, okay, I can start seeing Mike Vrabel being the head coach. The day that we did hire Dave Canales, which is yesterday, and Mike Vrabel was supposed to come in for an interview, I told Quan that once the news broke about Dave Canales, I saw a report where I think Mike Vrabel hurt himself was with bringing Arthur Smith in for an OC. I think if he would have said another name outside of Arthur Smith, I think Mike Vrabel probably would have been the Carolina Panthers head coach. Being in the NFC South and seeing what he was able to do, regardless of if it was Heineke or Ritter, but having the preseason Rookie of the Year in Bijan Robinson, you didn't take advantage of that. Having Drake London being supposedly a top 15 wide receiver, didn't take advantage of that. Then having Kyle Pitts, who is supposed to be a top 5 tight end, you did take advantage of that as well. So we saw the type of offense that he did bring to Atlanta. Yes, in a couple of years when he was with Tennessee, he did have a top 4 offense with Ryan Tannehill and Derrick Henry and A.J. Brown. But outside of that, what have you showed me lately? Again, that's one saying that in the sports world, what have you showed me lately? You're not a good offensive coordinator. So I think once that probably was discussed, I think it was no better answer than giving Dave Canales. One other point, Ben Johnson, if he does sign with the Commanders, I'm not mad about it because I think the Commanders do have a better opportunity on paper, but the game is not played on paper, it's played on the field. Having the top 5 pick, having over, I think it's 60 between 80 million in cap space and possibly drafting your new quarterback, I understand. But also, I'm happy that Dave Canales is here doing thorough research. Shout out to my guy Quan, sending me clips. We're sending clips back and forth. I think we got Dave Canales before he was a hot commodity for next year. Because if he had the same success and he stayed at the Buccaneers and we needed him to come in next year, we probably weren't going to be a top choice. And looking at all the openings, which you only have Atlanta and Seattle. Well, no, Atlanta got Raheem Morris, excuse me. You have Seattle and Washington being the only openings. I think we possibly got the top 3rd best coach in Dave Canales in this coaching cycle. But initially, it was kind of like, that's the best we can do. But I think we got it right. And shout out to Bryce Young. I appreciate the Panthers actually reaching out to him, asking him who he wanted to be his coach. But I'm going to get Quan's thought before we keep going into it, man. So how did you feel on yesterday when you got the news? What did you think about the process? And your initial first thoughts going into it?
Well, I think the writings was on the wall all along, man. When we were looking at the candidates, Dave Canales was was the only offensive coordinator out of those names that were listed. We were looking at Jairo Evero, we were looking at Vrabel, we were looking at Morris. Those are all defensive coordinators pretty much. So Canales was the only offensive guy, and obviously Tepper has been looking for an offensive guy since we got here. He obviously hired Matt Rule, who was an offensive head, and he also hired Frank Wright, who is also an offensive head. But you see the trend here. He's looking for somebody to lead this offense because obviously that's where we've struggled the most in the recent years. So we need an identity. So with, like Doug pointed out, we pretty much got Dave Canales before he continued to evolve. So now we have him locked in here and he can evolve here. So maybe we could have did, maybe we're on to something. Maybe we're on to something. Maybe, you know what I'm saying, this was the right move for the Panthers. They felt like they had to pull the trigger on Dave Canales. And I understand why. I mean, he's only what, 40, 45,
42.
something like that. 42.
Was he 42 or 45?
Yeah, 42, 45, somewhere around there, man. Pretty young. So obviously this guy could build connection with Bryce Young. Like you said, they reached out to Bryce Young and they asked him, hey, who would you feel comfortable working with? So David Canales, again, I think the writings were on the wall. With Vrabel coming in, I think that was just more so them filling out the process and just going through it. So, you know, it wasn't like predetermined to the national media, I guess. I don't know what they were exactly doing, but I don't know. I think Canales was the guy the whole time, man.
Yeah, I wouldn't say the whole time because I think everybody was still high on Ben Johnson. But I think once the process started, you know, you did interview Bobby Slowick. And I would tell everybody, I seen a report or a Panther supporter. Jim Harbaugh was not coming to the Carolina Panthers over the LA Chargers. I told Quan that from whenever
there's no way, man.
Yeah, there's no way. I mean, we had the expectations of coaches, we had to be real with ourselves. There's no way Jim Harbaugh was gonna, regardless of the roster in LA, you're coaching in LA. You got the spotlight. Regardless if you're not on TV, that's one of your mega areas for coverage in LA. So, and then I forgot, I think Fox studio is right across from the stadium. So come on now. But I did think Ben Johnson. I was interested in Bobby Slowick with the showing that he did in the playoffs, but I think Bobby Slowick is going to be in the same category as Ben Johnson going into next year. Hot commodity, staying an extra year with CJ, and whoever needs a coach next year, Chicago Bears, possibly, depending on what they need, he can possibly be an answer up there. Dave Canales, like I said, let's go ahead and talk about some of the reactions that came out, man. Trey Boston, one of the fan favorites, said, personally, I like the way Coach Canales has a resume of developing quarterbacks and bringing out their talents. I'm interested on how he builds the staff, can have a lot of promise built right. Peter Schrager also posted this 3 days ago. Word is Canales absolutely crushed his virtual interview last Thursday and followed it with another great one this week, meaning on Wednesday when he met us in person. Anyone who knows or has worked with him, he's all juice in all time. Robert Griffin III, I know how some people feel about him, but I was shocked with his response. He said, Dave Canales is spectacular hire by the Panthers, specifically for Bryce Young. Canales helped relaunch the careers of Geno Smith and Baker Mayfield in back-to-back years by building on the offense around their strengths in this West Coast scheme. Excited to see him work with Bryce. And then one more, Canales is going to do great things, emphasizing play action in Carolina offense, getting Bryce Young on the move. He knows that works and keeps it simple, getting the ball out of his best player's hands. Get a premium outside wide receiver in Charlotte now. We are seriously on T. Higgins' watch right now. That was just a few of the reactions outside of the media, outside of the Carolinas. Yes, Trey Boston is one player that always tweets when it comes to news, along with Thomas Davis and Jonathan Stewart. But outside of those people, those were national media outlets that were very happy with this hire. One thing I want to say before we talk about the resurgence of Geno Smith and Baker Mayfield, we have to understand this is Bryce's first year. I understand everybody saying, oh, Bryce needs to be brought back up. Bryce needs a quarterback or a coach to uplift him. He only had 1 year, people, and he didn't have a lot of weapons around him. I think Canales is going to help him to be a better quarterback, but Bryce is not a bad quarterback. Let's get that out the way already. I mean, regardless of all the quarterbacks that we have in the league, Bryce Young is a rookie going into his second year. I think Bryce's body will be better in shape. We will see the girth and the build in Bryce. I think we will see him looking a little bit bigger. He can't get taller, but I think body-wise and body frame, once we see him come in for the offseason, Bryce will be in better shape. The only thing I am worried about is now this is his third play caller, but we will not have a OC. Your OC is your head coach. Dave Canales will be in that helmet talking to him one-on-one. You don't have to worry about a Thomas Brown and a Frank Wright arguing over plays throughout the week. Your head coach is your offensive coordinator. When you look at it with Geno Smith, who won Comeback Player of the Year, if I'm not mistaken, last year. If I'm not mistaken, I think Geno won Comeback Player of the Year. I know he was a candidate. But if you look at the back-to-back years of resurgence, I will agree with Dave Canales has to be special. A lot of people wrote off Geno Smith. When that trade was done and Russell was let go and Geno came and they did have I can't think of the backup quarterback that they traded for from the Broncos right now. But whenever you did have Geno take over, and Drew Luck. A lot of people didn't think Geno would have the year that he did. And that goes into Dave Canales again. Like we said in the beginning, he was a quarterback's coach, but he was also passing game coordinator. Learning underneath Pete Carroll, that is one of the coaches that has, his time has passed. But look at what the success Pete Carroll had in Seattle. Seattle has always been a dominant NFC team, regardless of how far they go in the playoffs. For a certain long time where he was there with the Seattle organization, Dave Canales had success on that side. Also with Russell Wilson, another short quarterback that I think Dave Canales can work with. That's one thing I think that's going to help Bryce as well. He's worked with short quarterbacks. With Baker, yes, Baker was a Panther and a Ram last year. I think a lot of people thought it was a joke what we saw during the offseason. When we did see film on Baker, we're like, oh, the Buccaneers are not going to be anything. Quan and myself definitely thought that they were going to be a top 5 pick this year. No, they won the NFC South and made it to the playoffs this year. That goes kudos to Dave Canales resurging a new type of energy and showing off. Baker does still have it. And that's the reason why Baker Mayfield is going to get a payday this offseason and possibly be the quarterback for the Buccaneers here for the next 2 to 3 years, man. So I just think Dave Canales, people have to give him his due respect, regardless of what candidate we have. He's a proven winner. He's a hard worker, and players love him. What you got, Quan?
See, my thing with Dave Canales, man, when we were going through the process of interviewing coaches, I looked up Dave Canales. I didn't really know too much about him. I don't watch too much of Tampa Bay football unless they're playing us or obviously the playoffs. So I looked up Dave Canales. I wanted to see who he was, and I saw an interview or a press conference that he did. And one thing that really stood out to me is his philosophy going into the game. He's not coming in there telling you, I'm about to run the ball 40 times today. I'm about to, get the ball in Mike Evans' hands today. No, his philosophy was, I'm going to play chess with the opponent. What I'm going to do is see how you come out, and then I'm going to counteract that. I'm going to swing back. So that's one thing that I really like about that, because here in Charlotte, we talked about it earlier, we don't really have an identity on offense. And with him having that philosophy, we can actually figure out how to make adjustments moving forward into the game. That's something that we have not seen with any of these coaches, with Matt Rule, Frank Wright, none of them. We haven't seen our coaches be able to make that type of adjustment in games. So that's one thing I am excited about with Dave Canales. I do like his philosophy. I was able to pull up a little bit of tape with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and see what their offensive identity really is. And just looking at it, man, it's really just making Baker Mayfield comfortable. They're comfortable with passing out of the center. They're comfortable with doing play action. They use a lot of motion. They use a lot of routes that make sense with their receivers. They get the ball out of Baker Mayfield's hands fast, and they mix it up. That's the thing. He mixed it up, and I really like that about him, that you don't really know what you're going to get week in and week out. One day, the running back could be going off, and then the next week, your quarterback could be passing for 300 yards. You just don't know what you're going to get with that offense, so it makes it hard for defense to have to game plan against an offense that like to switch it up like that. So that's one thing I'm really excited about with Dave Canales coming into Carolina. We can really show you a different look every week. And I think that's needed for our offense moving forward. Now, obviously, you got to get your personnel fixed. That's priority number one. You got to get the right personnel. Our offensive line has obviously, we've been bottom tier of the league. Our offensive line cannot protect our young quarterback. That's been proven. And then obviously, if you look on the perimeter, we don't really have a lot of receivers separating. We talk about that on film over at the Panthers Experience. And we talked about that a lot over here at What's Up, Doug, and even other platforms. So these receivers really struggle to get separation. So obviously you have to go get you these receivers out of the free agent, or if you're going to draft, then draft. We'll do what you got to do. But regardless, we got to fix this personnel because what you're trying to run, your scheme, is not going to work with what you got here now. So go get some guys that can get some yards at the catch. Somebody that, you can get the ball out to quick, like they're doing with Baker Mayfield and Mike Evans and Chris Godwins and who's number 10 over there with Tampa Bay? I can't remember his name.
Palmer. That's our
Palmer.
guy Deezy. That's our guy Deezy's little cousin, man.
Oh, that's what's up, man. Shout out to Deezy, man. But yeah, just you got speedster guys and you got tall guys, guys that can really take over a game at any moment. So you got to pretty much mimic that. You got to get some speed in here. You got to help Bryce Young. You got to protect him. And I think with this kind of philosophy, with switching it up and getting, your quarterback used to passing out of the center, play action, getting your guy rolling out and seeing the field, I think that's going to help Bryce out when it comes to developing. And Doug, you mentioned it earlier. This is finally going to be a consistent coach for Bryce Young. He's already had multiple guys in his ears. He obviously had multiple voices. So how do you develop as a quarterback, no matter how young or old you are in this league? How do you develop as a quarterback when you have so many guys in your ear? So with Dave Canales being here and him having that track record of working with quarterbacks previously, he's been a pass game coordinator. He's been a quarterback's coach. So he understands the ins and outs of playing the quarterback position. He's had quarterbacks that people written off, and Geno Smith throwing for 4,000 yards and getting to the playoffs in the first year. Also with Baker Mayfield, another guy we pretty much wrote off. We, like Doug said, we picked on him. He came out here and threw 4,000 yards and looked really good with his completion percentages throughout the year. So I think he can do the same thing for Bryce. Not saying it's going to be an immediate fix, but I think over time we will see Bryce Young have those career years where he's throwing for over 4,000 yards or throwing for 3,500 yards or something like that, man. So I think Dave Canales is definitely the guy to help Bryce develop consistently, and that's something that's definitely needed here, man. And also, with him being the offensive coordinator, he understands the ins and outs of how to, run the he know how to, draw up plays. He's been a wide receiver coach as well, and a quarterback's coach. So he knows how to get his guys open, to scheme his guys open, and kind of build the connection with his quarterback and his receivers. And that's something that we really need to do here. Obviously, our weapons are just lackluster. So I'm liking a lot about Dave Canales, and hopefully it just pans out to be the right guy, man.
See, I would say this. Quan pointed out two things for us. In the presser that Quan's talking about, it is on YouTube. You can find it. When he was talking about game plan, we're not going to tell the people we're going to run the ball down their throat or we're going to throw it 30 or 40 times. You're going to have to game plan for the Carolina Panthers or Dave Canales like you don't know what's going to be thrown at you. One thing that Quan also alluded to is the offensive line is going to have to be better, but he's not going to be back there for 5 or 6 seconds just pacing, looking left and right. They're going to do a lot of screens. They're going to, and one thing I think will definitely let me know about Dan Morgan. Are we going to keep Miles Sanders, which I hope we're going to trade? Because if you look at Rachaad White, how they utilized him, Chuba Hubbard is going to need another running back to go beside him in that type of role, because they utilize their running backs a lot in this type of offense that he's going to bring to the Carolinas. Like Quan said, the wide receivers. Again, I think where we drafted all defensive players in that one draft, not saying we need to do that for the offensive side, but I think free agency would definitely let us know how we attack the draft, because there are a lot of holes on this team, starting with the offensive line, protecting your franchise quarterback, bringing him weapons to go along with him, and then also making the defense stronger than they are and I'm praying that Evero is still here, because Canales does have a lot of respect for Eazy-E Evero coming to be the defensive coordinator again for the Carolina Panthers. But philosophy-wise, like Quan was sending clips saying, Doug, I like, his pressure throughout the week, what he's saying, what we can look like, what we can run. Also, I think a lot of people will finally see Bryce throw for over 250 yards, not just once. I think a lot of people are like, oh, he can't even have a 300-yard game. You'll see that. You'll see that. And again, people have to understand he didn't have the CJ Stroud type year. He didn't have the Cam Newton type year. Again, the front office, the GM and the head coach were not on one, and the coaches were not on one accord. So it caused our quarterback having a good year, and he was the fall guy. But I think when you have a GM and a head coach in unison, we should be good, man. Mike K, we're going to show another little thumbnail here. Mike K, once we announced the news, stated that just chatted with a veteran NFL position coach familiar with the expected new Panthers head coach Dave Canales' coaching style. Dave Canales is an excellent play caller. He brings a lot of energy to the meetings with players. He's very, very positive. He's an uplifting kind of guy. He's an easy guy to get along with and an easy guy to talk to. Easy guy to play for. He's very sophisticated with his screen packages, which we just said with Chuba Hubbard. His play action passes. He marries the run game and pass game. One of the best young minds. I cannot believe he just called plays for 1 year with the product that he just put out in Tampa. He's very impressive. This guy, sky's the limit. He's the right type of guy to go through the rebuild with, if that is the case, because of optimism, attitude, and his work ethic. I know a lot of people are looking at the numbers that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers had in rankings. I'm not worried about that. Again, if you just heard what Mike K said, this man is well respected. He's a young mind. And again, I think we got him. If we did not get him and he pulled his name out like Ben Johnson, we would be in the same situation that we're in right now, where another team has poached a head coach that we wanted to their team. I think if you give Dave Canales the weapons and we be patient, David Tepper, we will be fine. And I think we did get it right. You got a young-minded, and again, you agreed and were in agreement with your young franchise quarterback.
Exactly, man. And I think that's moving forward. That's really just a recipe for rebuilding, man. You got to build this chemistry, build some consistency between your quarterback, your coach, and just get some personnel in here to help us win. So I think that's the key moving forward, man. We just got to be patient and just kind of follow the blueprint that the Detroit Lions went through. They got their coach, and Dan Campbell, let's be honest, man, that first year was terrible. But they still believed in Dan Campbell. They actually had players that wanted to play for Dan Campbell, and he knew the process. He knew it. He was like, "Hey, y'all, stick with me. We about to get out of this slump." And sure enough, the following year, they came close to come to the playoffs. They started making noise around the league late last season, and now we're looking at them in the NFC Championship as one of the best teams in the National Football League, who could have a big chance at upsetting the 49ers, man. So I like what Dave Campbell had did over there with the Detroit Lions, and I'm hoping that Dave Canales over here can do something similar like that he did, that he can do with Carolina.
I agree with you, Quan, man. I definitely agree with you. But the last thing that we got to bring up, and I was kind of heartbroken when I heard it last night. Now you have all the puzzle pieces. You have a new GM in Dan Morgan. You still do have David Tepper as an owner, and you have Dave Canales as your new head coach. Are these the right pieces to bring Carolina back to that 2015 year? Is this the right pieces for us to finally get over the hill, get out of this playoff drought? The only thing that I am skeptical about with this is Dave Canales is not answering to his GM. David Tepper still has his hand in the Carolina Panthers. I would have thought with Dan Morgan being the GM and director of operations that Dave Canales will answer directly to him. But I think the only saving grace that I have for this hire is Dan Morgan and Dave Canales used to work with each other. And I think they're on one accord. The 6-year deal blows my mind. David Tepper just got another tax write-off. 6 years for Dave Canales. I think that's one thing I'm surprised Ben Johnson didn't want to come to with the money. But again, that's the last time I'm going to say his name because I have my coach now in Dave Canales, and I entrust in him that he would get the thing right. But 2 out of 3 pieces I think we have right. If David Tepper does not get too involved and he allows Dan Morgan and Dave Canales to do the football side, and he's just the owner, I think we will be fine. But that's a big if and all exclamation points, the biggest font print that you can print out. I've heard and seen where people are saying that, we're basically pulling from the Seattle Seahawks, tree where we got Scott Fitter, you got Dan Morgan, now you got Dave Canales. I don't agree with that because, again, I think the due diligence was done right. And I do think Dave Canales, again, if we give him time, Quan just said it before we talked about the missing pieces. Campbell for the Detroit Lions Dan Campbell did not have a good year, but they drafted well. People saw the progression. Year 2 was, hey, we went on a little win streak, but we didn't make the playoffs. And like Quan said, now they're a prominent standstill in the NFC. If you give him time and if the GM does his job, Carolina will be back. And I think we will be a force to be reckoned with. The defense has always been there. With Carolina, what do we always have problems with? The offense. You got an offensive-minded coach, well-respected around the league. Now it's time for the pieces to fit those missing pieces and holes, and let's go to work, man. And again, it starts now. Building this staff, building a great staff. Now you have to start scouting, and then it's time for the draft, man.
That's a fact, man. One thing with David Tepper, obviously he has a track record of signing coaches to these big deals. Obviously we had Matt Rule with 7 years. I don't know how much Frank Wright had, man, but
I think it was a 5-year deal, 5 or 6 year deal too. It was a crazy deal.
So again, David Tepper, he got the money, so that's no issue for David Tepper. But I do want David Tepper to understand that this is a process. This is a process. I know you usually, if it don't work out in the first year, you're going to move on. That's what he did with Frank Wright. That's what he did with Joe Brady. That's what he did with Teddy Bridgewater. It's a huge list that we can go down. But let's do it right this time. Let's actually build. And let's not panic if this first year turned out to not be as great. All we're looking for right now is some signs of improvement. Let's go to a 6-7 win type of season. Let's see some type of improvement, and let's see the numbers go up with offense. Like I wouldn't even be mad at us putting up, 20 points a game or somewhere around 23 points a game. Something that shows some steps towards improvement. But again, it's gonna take time, and we just got to be patient, man. And I hope that if it doesn't turn out to be like we expected to be in the first year, I hope we still stick with Canales moving forward, and just really trust the process. So don't be going coach to coach to coach, and then I don't want to be here next year looking for another coach.
No.
So let's really just stick with this. We just gotta stick with it, man. Honestly, that's really what it's gonna be.
Well, I think the real optimism, like you said, we have to have improvement. Nobody's saying we're gonna win the NFC South. If we do great. But you have to be realistic with your expectations now. One thing we did do with Frank Wright, we're going to win the NFC. We're going to win the NFC South. No, let's take it, pump your brakes. Let's start, from track one. My optimism now, like I said, I started at 3 with Dan Morgan. I'm at a 5 because, again, my excitement for this team went through the roof last year. And that's one thing I'm going to take it day by day now. Second by second, minute by minute. I am ecstatic, but I have to be realistic as well. First, let's see what we do with these signings. If the signings are great, we'll go up closer to 10. Once we get to the draft, we do a good draft. We'll get a good number, but we also have to remember what we're doing. This is not going to be built. Rome was not built in one day. I know everybody's heard that saying. It's not built in one day, but again, I think we're on the right track record. I give it a 5. We had to be patient as Panther fans. We got our coach, we got our GM. Now it's time to support the team. No longer that CJ Stroud noise. No longer that Ben Johnson. If you support him, you support him. But if we're really Carolina Panther fans, you got to stand on it and keep pounding, man. So before we close out, man, this is episode 1 with your guy, Uncle Quan and CDougie, man. The rebirth of the Carolina Panthers. Episode 2 will be coming once free agency starts. We'll go into a couple of free agents that we would like, some restructures that we think possibly could happen. and also talk about a couple of prospects going throughout the year, man. So this is our first segment, man. Quan, go ahead and tell the people what you think, what to look forward to coming up in the future, man.
Hey, Panthers fans, just put on your seatbelt and strap in, man. Yeah, if you are locked in, then go ahead and lock in, man. But just don't be switching up. Don't switch up. Just hang in there. I know a lot of people are really just at that point where a lot of people are fed up with the Panthers. Or I've even heard some people say, like, look, man, I'm about to just give up. And look, just if you are with us, you're with us. And so strap in, man. But I think, like Doug said, I think we are making the right decisions, but only time will tell. We've obviously got our hopes up in the past, this past season with the new era that was started last year. But hopefully this era is the right one. But again, we got to strap our seatbelts in and be patient. So moving forward, I think we're gonna be all right, Panther Nation.
Yes, sir, man. Before we get out of here, Quan, go ahead and give me your AFC and NFC picks for this weekend, man.
I'm gonna go with the upset Detroit Lions. I think the Detroit Lions can upset the San Francisco 49ers. 49ers will be pretty much without Deebo Samuels again. So I think they have a good shot. I mean, I think the San Francisco 49ers really struggled against Green Bay last week. So I think that Detroit can really use that for the blueprint coming into this game. You really just have to attack the 49ers early, and you got to keep your foot on the gas with the 49ers if you want to beat them. So I think they got a chance. It's really up to Detroit to lose this game. So I'm picking Detroit. And then on the other side, Kansas City Chiefs and the Baltimore Ravens is another matchup I cannot wait to see, man. Anytime these two teams play, I always tune in. So can't wait to see that rematch with them. And this is really where it matters the most. You got Lamar on who's trying to prove the league that he can win in the playoffs, trying to solidify that MVP trophy. And then you got on the other side, Patrick Mahomes, who nobody in their right mind would ever write off. So I'm looking forward to this matchup. I'm going to go ahead and go with the Baltimore Ravens with this one. I'm hoping the Baltimore Ravens win because I'm tired of seeing the Chiefs in the AFC Championship. I'm tired of seeing them in the Super Bowl. Granted, it is deserving. They earned it. You know what I'm saying? I love the way they play ball. I love the way Patrick Mahomes play quarterback. But let's be honest. They're like the new Brady and the Patriots right now. So I'm tired of them. Let's see Baltimore get to the Super Bowl. And let's see the Detroit Lions and the Ravens compete in the Super Bowl, man.
Yes, sir, man. I ain't going to be long because Quan took my projection. Detroit versus everybody. Cinderella story. We already talked about how we want the Carolina Panthers to be just like Dan Campbell and the Detroit Lions. I would like to see Christian McCaffrey possibly get opportunity, but I wanted that here in Carolina. I'm not going to be, cry over sour grapes or be bitter. But, I mean, if he gets there, he gets there. But I'm going for Detroit. And shout out to Lamar Jackson, who helped me win not one, but 2 fantasy football championships this year. So I am going for the Baltimore Ravens. I think I told a lot of people before the season started, Lamar Jackson will get MVP. He will show that he's worth that bag that he got this offseason. And they've just been the best team in football this year from start to finish. So I'm looking for a Lions versus Baltimore Super Bowl. And where the chips may fall, that's where it may be at, man. But again, we appreciate everybody pulling up over here. What's up, Doug? Man, I'm going to go ahead and shout out my God's channel because even though this is my channel, this is my co-host right here, my brother, Uncle Quan, man, over at the Panthers Experience with Uncle Quan, man. We will drop the link in the description. Definitely check over there, man. Again, this is just our first segment for the offseason. We have great things coming for you guys. Hope everybody enjoy the content. As we always say over here, what's up, Dub? Stay blessed, stay safe. One love. Keep pounding.
One love.